This is Leid Stories. I'm Utrice Leid, and I'm trying to claw my way back up to where I was just a week ago. It's going to happen. It's happening already, as a matter of fact. And getting back into the old saddle. I want to talk about, is it possible to stop this bullet train? We haven't even made an official switch to a new administration, yet the folks are acting as though they've seen the blueprints and everything will be fine once Trump's gone and Joe Biden is at the helm. I wish I had that kind of confidence. I wish I had that outlook, but I don't. There seems to be a determination that there's going to be no overview of Trump's term, and where multiple bodies are buried. And this is very, very important. This is very necessary work. Maybe people think it's too early and let some time go by and put some distance between Trump and Biden, and then you can perhaps introduce it little by little in dribs and drabs. But it seems to me that that time is now, to begin that process now. Because there are no criticisms of domestic and foreign policies, no discussions about the price we must pay for Trump's serious blunders and incompetence, no hearings on what has to be straightened out or corrected, and now at what cost. Biden and his folks are acting like the traffic cops. You've seen them a lot at the scene of a really bad accident. And of course, you're curious, what happened here? So you slow down, and their job is to say, come on now, move along. There's nothing to see here. Just move along, move along. But in fact, there's a lot to see, even if Biden is reluctant to be our tour guide. He doesn't want this job of being tour guide right now through President Trump's crazy one term. And yet, this is what we have to do. I don't see how we're going to make this transition and come into the fullness of Joe Biden's term without first settling some scores. And I'm not talking about vengeance. I'm talking about clarity. What happened here in 4 years? What happened to this country? And where has it put us at this moment in time in our history? Do we just say, okay, come on, let's just wipe the slate clean. Let's be the bigger people. Let's, try and see if we can, by our own example, we give an indication that we are peaceful people and we just want to get on with things. And whatever it is that happened, well, it has happened. And we have to, we have to stiffen our backs and gird our waists and say, well, it's not the easiest thing to do, but it is a grown-up thing to do. It is the right thing to do. It's the mature thing to do. So let's do that so that we can move on. I am not of that philosophy. I don't believe in that. Of course, we have to move on. Of course, we'll have to get on with life. But we have to make it clear, it seems to me, what happened here in the last 4 years. And in what ways are our troubles now and the troubles we soon will encounter directly linked to Donald Trump and his administration? We don't want to talk about that because people think it is, well, it's unkind, or they think it's not classy that one president should beat up on another. I'm not talking about beating up on anybody. I'm talking about being very clear about what happened here in the last 4 years and how we start this new administration, the dawning of the supposedly new day, way behind on many fronts because Donald Trump just ravaged this country. He and his so-called administration. And it, in fact, is not fair, in my view, it's not fair to saddle the people with the additional burden of having to swallow it and pretend what we suffered for the last 4 years is, we can get over it. We just have to work a little harder, and we just have to be a little bit more forgiving. And, we have to understand that things can't be perfect, and we have to make allowances for mistakes. Again, I'm not of that philosophy. We didn't do it when it was supposed to be done. At the time it should have been done. It seems to me to be in perfect order to get it done now. We should not begin another administration with these matters unaddressed. The people are owed, it seems to me, an explanation, an accounting, a record of what we now face as a nation because of what was allowed to happen. And still, it's ongoing with no apparent price paid, no accountability. The record is clean. He walks away with a clean book. And we have people who have no jobs, or they're sick, or their resources have dried up, and they have no control over it. And all those people in the bunkers, safely ensconced in their bunkers, have the nerve to expect us to tolerate the fact that they now demand that we just go on, as if nothing happened. They're the bigger people. Whatever it is, even if it's wrong, forgive it and move on. That's a sign, they say, of maturity. Well, I don't want to be mature. I don't like that kind of maturity. because it's a kind of maturity we have been asked to demonstrate over and over and over again. Somehow, a way will be found to forgive, to overlook, to ignore, to even lie about, and reconstruct a reality we know we did not experience. We were the victims. We were in the clutches of a maniac. And no amount of yelling and screaming by the people that this should not be allowed. Stop it. Stop this bullet train and let us get off, or let him get off. No amount of pleading did anything to correct it, to address it, even to acknowledge it. And even now, as he prepares to go through the door, they're doing their best before he leaves to fix things up, to doctor up the history of these past 4 years and of this reprehensible president. All the good things he did. Well, he's really smart. He himself acknowledged that. He's a stable genius, he says. Is this what happens when a country is put under the heels of a stable genius? Then we have to start all over again from scratch. We have to rebuild, and mostly we have to rebuild ourselves because we are so demolished. That's the story that I want to talk about today. The train is idling right now, but the engine is on. It could take off at any time. And with it will go the record. There will be no record as this man leaves. And someone else takes over about the monumental heartaches and hurts and deprivations and racism in this country in the last 4 years that will have long-term impact and effect. And we know that. Children and grandchildren will inherit the job of patching things up long after he's gone. And the insistence, this is what really bothers me, the insistence that there be no record of it. We should not talk about it. We should not itemize it. We should not get too close to the truth of it. Just, we could agree in substance that it wasn't the best time, but let it go. You'll be called immature for holding on to grievances that you can't solve, you can't do anything about. You'll just be talking, spitting in the wind, while he gets to move on. He and his minions, they get to move on because life at that level is like that. There's a certain amount of Teflon that comes with it. Nothing sticks. And maybe, just maybe down the road a little bit, someone will start the process of re-evaluating these last 4 years and giving us a slight hint of what the reality really was for the vast majority of Americans. I am saying we have to impress upon Joe Biden that this is one of his primary tasks. First, don't start your administration without telling us what you're inheriting. Don't start out by being Mr. Miracle Man without telling us the troubles that we face, and directly because of your predecessor. We should be very clear about who caused what to happen. It ought to be documented. It ought to be on the books. Because you say a thing and it goes into the ether and it's lost for all time. No, we have to have it written down now. We got to have a record that says, this is what this man did to this country and to all of us. This is what he did. And more importantly, or I should say just as importantly, these are the things he refused to do. Did he create a more equal society? Hell no. Did he lift people up? Well, yes, those people who circled around him. His sycophants, they've done very well. His children, they've done very well. But let's at least make the attempt to quantify what this stable genius has left or will be leaving in his wake. That becomes automatically our number one task and responsibility, which is to deal with it. We have to walk behind him, to clean up the crap that he leaves as he goes. And pretend it didn't happen. All this damage, it didn't occur. We were, after all, fortunate to have this stable genius at the helm of state. And it may sound completely outrageous to say it now, because you have witnessed the reality of it. He will be a hero. Donald Trump is the next national hero. And the books will reflect it. And the records will reflect it. What a great man this was. He was perhaps misunderstood. But all in all, he was a great man, a great American, a great leader. Will Joe Biden have the guts to set the record straight as he begins his term? Would he have the guts to tell people what he knows he's facing as he comes into office, and what he knows we are facing as he comes into office, with the great likelihood that all those high ideals will not be met. They will not be part of the picture. All those hopes and dreams and aspirations will not happen. The people who are suffering will most likely be the people who will be forfeiting their own children's future for at least the next 4 years. And don't sell me, please don't sell me that Broadway crap. We could put a band over here and we can sell tickets and everybody would have a great time. No, it's not going to be a great time. It's going to be a very challenging time. And the people who historically have carried the pain of this country on their backs and who have been paying for the restoration of this country with their own lives and their children's lives, they will be looked to this time by a very nice man to forfeit their future in order to save America. People talk. You and I will have to deal with the reality of what the translation comes down to. Their vision is our pain. Their plans have nothing to do with their sacrifice. They're not into the sacrificing business. They expect, and this is true also of Biden, yes, he will be the new president. And he will continue to expect a quality of life that he has had for these many years. He and his children, grandchildren, neighbors, good friends, they all expect no significant change in their lives. It is understood, however, that you and I should be suiting up because we have a serious battle ahead. It's called life. We're not of the privileged few. I want us to talk about that today. There will be no accounting. I'm not expecting Donald Trump to get up and do a public confession. He's not right in his head. And whatever is there is disconnected. It's been disconnected for years. But will this incoming president set the record straight? Will this incoming president do the honorable thing of saying, folks, this is what I'm inheriting. This is what we all are inheriting. This is the work before us. And it is no fault of your own. That, too, needs to be said. The people entrusted the future, they entrusted this nation, and all its resources, all of its capabilities, to the stable genius and his administration. And if we do nothing else that's honorable at this time, we should at least put it on the record. You're listening to Leid Stories on PRN.FM, and we're talking about stopping this bullet train that is rumbling down the tracks as it's supposed to, because that's what it is. It's about him, the soon-to-be former president. And we just have to muddle through. That's what historically we're supposed to do. I say it's time, before we do anything else, let's have an accounting. Let's have the record reflect what we have been given to work with. Let the record reflect what we have to confront on top of what we have to confront. 888-874-4888 is the number to call. Gene from Maryland, let's hear what you're thinking.
Hey, Utrice, and good afternoon to you and the audience.
Thank you so much, Gene, and the same to you.
Thank you. So, this today's question that you're posing is I think directly on point, and I would suggest to you that there will be no accounting. And I was sitting there thinking as I was listening to your monologue, how many times you had Charles Ortel on the broadcast who would point out with solid documentation, in detail, the crimes of the Clintons, only to have the Justice Department swat it away and say, nope, nothing here, move along.
Move along.
That's it. Just move along. President Obama did the same thing with respect to the Bush administration when he said, we're going to look forward, not backward. No accounting. And so given this kind of a history, I think that we would be joking ourselves to believe that there would be any sort of accounting or any real examination of the kinds, and not just the behaviors, but the transgressions of the law that have gone on. And we saw Nancy Pelosi over the course of the impeachment, where she simply refused to use something that was actually an impeachable offense and came up with some foolishness. Of course it got shot down. And so when you can't even get the people who are supposed to do the accounting to look at the facts, there will be no accounting.
Where does that leave us?
In a terrible spot. Because what the history continues to show us is that the forces of capital, the people in charge, the Bill Gateses of the world can come in and do whatever they want, inject you with whatever they want, give you some sort of nonsense story, whether it's reasonable and logical or not, you're going to accept it, and they're going to move on to the next dollar of profit. And whether it's the yellow vests in France, the Black Lives Matter movement here, we're still seeing police shooting people down, breaking into houses, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and not being held accountable. No matter what lawsuits, no matter what happens with respect to articles in the paper or callers to Leid Stories, it doesn't matter. And the history is showing us that it doesn't matter. And it's so sad to say it that way, because to the point of your question, what do we do? And I think what we're being shown here is just how helpless we truly are.
You really think we are helpless to change something about this transition? and how it ought to work?
I think that our ability to do something meaningful, I think we are truly hampered in that area. I have a friend who has done some interesting writing with respect to the opioid crisis, and she points out how the government allowed the opioid crisis to fester, state after state, where you have measurable percentages of the population of people who are addicted to prescription opioids. Now, it's been well known for the last 30 years that Purdue Pharma was encouraging doctors and others to prescribe these medications, overproducing the amount necessary for the market to be served, and the regulator knew it. And so when you see that kind of thing happen, where you are poisoning states at a time, and it's allowed to happen, I think there's a real question there around, really defining and taking a look at what helplessness is. And remember, the Sacklers just walked away. They took the money first, and then they walked away. I don't see any difference between what the Clintons walked away with, what Bush walked away with. Trump is getting ready to walk away. The Sacklers walked away. I don't see a difference.
Well, I think it's time to create a record, a people's record, of every single elected official's term in office. What happened and what did not happen? I think it is important to create a people's record that will be available to the public for a long time. Thank you for getting us started today, Jean. I really appreciated your points of view and your generosity in sharing it. Thank you so much. Ed from Jamaica, you're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon, Yatrice.
Hello.
How you doing?
Okay, so tell us, how do we stop this bullet train?
The American people in general, first of all, have to take responsibility for this condition. It has been, since I've been alive, because I can remember the reinvention of Ronald Reagan and the rewriting of history. This president whose administration allowed crack cocaine in the country, who allowed false wars, who I honestly believe was the beginning of homelessness in this country. I can remember being a young man seeing homeless people for the first time under the Reagan administration. And he served 2 terms. And he's been rewritten from bedtime to Bonzo to a political icon. So I don't see any difference happening with Trump in this system. This system does not work. It does not work for the common people. It does not work for us. And until we've abused ourselves of the myth that there are things we can do to make this system work, then a personal record or people's record of the atrocities that were committed against the general public is going to serve no avail, because we can record everything, but we got to take action. We've got to shut this system down by any means necessary, because it is high time that we see that this system has no love for us. You can have 10 people make billions of dollars. 10 people during this crisis have made over $282 billion. That is not only insane, it is sinful if you believe in a God or religion. And it's high time that we got to get off the pot and shut this thing down. Get in the streets, scream about it on the internet, scream about whatever you do. Shut this thing down, because these people do not care about us. And then this slap in the face of $600 here, $300 there, when you can look across the globe in Germany, in Italy, in France, where the government is paying the people a salary because they had shut down. to quote unquote, stop the spread of this virus. I mean, America got to wake up because these people don't care. They don't care about us. They don't care about life. They have no morals. They have no dignity. And I don't expect them to do anything decent or moral because they have none. They are devoid of it.
Could I ask you to make a short-term prediction about Trump almost at the point of leaving office? What would the record reflect?
I mean, it's a truthful record. Obviously, he was an incompetent fool, responsible for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of deaths, responsible for inept government, responsible for unleashing what I believe to be a future pandemic with this Project Warp Speed of vaccination thing, because we still don't know what the long-term effects of this is going to be, how this is going to play on the population at large. I mean, he's the pinnacle of incompetence. But, I mean, if things stay the same, I can guarantee 50 years from now, I probably won't be here. But I guarantee the rewriting of history, the fact that, he was misunderstood, he was a dynamic individual, he was charismatic. If we let this system continue, it'll rewrite history. This system will try to rise Nero. I mean, come on, this system is a joke. It is not for the people, and the people need to get up and realize that and put the work in to end it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for your contribution today. 888-874-4888. I'm talking about breaking tradition. And the tradition is to give presidents a nice send-off, because after all, they won't be back. So you give them a nice send-off and you do some house cleaning behind that. You clean up the mess. You clean up the record. You make all bad things disappear. And the person who we know, is recreated into almost a saint. We have nothing really bad to say about him. And you look to people like Biden. Here he is, and he's fighting, and he's talking about the need for a different way and so forth. The last thing that Biden is going to do is to conduct an orientation session. And to do that as he comes in. I want you to know what I have been given to deal with. And in these various areas, in health and education, the economy, and so forth, this is what was left for me to do. So expect, and it's not going to be any news to us. This is a message we've been getting for year after year after year. But is it time that we get an accounting? We can't expect Trump to assail himself, but we should expect some kind of an appraisal from the incoming president as to what exactly he's facing in all these different areas, which means what we, the people, will have to deal with. So the more we continue this idea that, well, it might be embarrassing, he's going, after all, he's going out of office, and just give him just let him go. A peaceful departure. It's not about that. It's about what is the truth. What are you leaving for people to deal with? And how do you make the connection? This is where you start to make the connection between the awful truths that we are existing with and the awful choices that will soon be made. and we have to put it on the record. We have to put it on, make it real. Put it on the record. 888-874-4888. Do you think that we are in that situation now where we are about to repeat the old canard of move along, nothing to see here, and as if the clock starts on the day the new president is inaugurated, and then the clock starts. And even so, most of what we need to know as a nation, we will never know, because somebody is going to be in charge of editing. They'll tell you, we don't want people to know this. We don't want other nations to know that. We don't want to be embarrassing ourselves in the eyes of the world. What do you think? I think it's time that we create a process as we go. Don't wait till the end of the term. As we go, we document the people's interpretation of the life that they're living and the contradictions within. That's what we need to do. 888-874-4888. We have some time for your questions and your comments right now. So I think it is a disservice when one administration shuts down and this so-called smooth transition begins. We don't know a thing that we're supposed to know. David from Brooklyn, you're on the air.
What's coming to mind to me is this. The Republicans and the Democrats appear to be adversaries, and they go through this dance of competing against each other. However, as I see it, they're both on the same side. They give the appearance of adversaries to the masses of people, being adversaries, and yet they're on the same side, on the side of the oligarchs and the rulers and the people who put capitalism into overdrive. And what the president is essentially there to do is to keep the masses of people in check, while those who really rule and control do everything they can to increase wealth and income at home and all over the world with their imperialism. So it might be hard for Biden to stand up there and talk about, what has been lost and all that, when he is one of the culprits, the biggest culprit himself. When he was with Obama and before he was with Obama in the Senate and passing these draconian laws that lock people up for all kinds of stuff that they shouldn't be locked up for, especially drugs, or you should be treating people medically if they have problems with drugs. And so, as I see it, we're talking about people who are they're jiving the people. The mission here is to enrich those at the top, and we cannot forget it. I talked before about solutions, and I'm still saying the same thing. The only way you're going to get the things that the people need is rebellion. That's the only thing. Because these people in the Republican and Democrat Party are on the same team, but they're faking it, just like when the famous basketball team, the that used to entertain people, and they just was entertainment rather than basketball. The Harlem Globetrotters. Okay, so that's the way I see it.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for your call today and for your input. 888-874-4888. I'd like to take at least one more call before we sign off. These are the kinds of discussions we have to have, and openly. We don't need to go into a little private space and shush about it. We should let people know that people have been raising these kinds of questions publicly. And after all, they're the kinds of questions that citizens, that the people should be able to raise freely. And because they are so necessary now, we have learned the hard way. This whole process of governance is not a one-sided thing. We, the people, have to exercise our own power and authority over how we are governed as a nation. If anybody could, with a straight face, tell me that this past 4 years was a great example of that, you'll have to excuse me, but I'll be ready to smack you right down about that. That is not correct. It's not true. And we cannot retreat. We have to keep advancing, because when we retreat on our own rights. We give people more and more latitude and permission to do what they want to do in their best interest. Why are we living like this when we supposedly have such great leadership? Why are people suffering this way? Why do these problems persist? And why can't we get past them? We keep circling the same problems every election year. I agree with Ed's observation that we have to be very, very involved in our own interests and to keep these so-called leaders in check, because they will do anything. Just like the story that we did earlier this week. 10 people, just 10 billionaires, could give every single person a check. They could give every person a check to get themselves straight out of this dilemma that we're all in. And still, after doing that, they will still have more money than they had 9 months ago. That's the obscenity of all of this. So we have to do an audit on ourselves. We have abrogated our responsibility of vigilance over this process. And by doing so, we checked ourselves out of the equation. We really don't have a legitimate complaint. Nobody said, oh, no, you can't do this. We ourselves said, I don't feel like doing this. Or there's no use to it. And we checked out on ourselves. So obviously, we give permission for people to do what they want to do with us. But I caution that we should make this effort now so that at least it begins a resurgence of people's interest in what democracy really ought to be, which is you keeping an eye on the store. You're keeping an eye on the store. Because left to their own devices, we see what happens. What happens is what we have now. And we have been having versions of this for so many years. We've got to stop it. And we have to get serious about it. And by serious, I mean the same preferences that you have as a person, they just multiply when you're talking about the people. We all want to lead a better life, a more rewarding life. We want the best for children and the elderly. We want everybody to be able to affirm and assert their rights. And we are the ones who must do that work. Thanks so much for contributing today and for listening. Let's come back to each other again tomorrow. Bye-bye.